Hey, podcast listeners, Al here. I separated a terrific chat with Marco Rota up into two parts because first we talked about the Lumen cultural transformation, culture first because culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? Second, for next week, is Lumen's technology transformation. Thanks for listening. Be well.
Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey, podcast listeners, welcome back to Making Data Simple. Hope everybody's extremely well. We're in the dead of winter as I'm recording this. Although it's a little warmer today, it's not too bad. But I'm a summer guy myself, so hopefully we'll get there. We'll get there soon. Today I have an distinguished guest. I have Marco Rota with me. Marco is the Vice President of Strategic Technology Alliances at Lumen Technologies. Lumen's mission is global communication services provider, ignites business growth through connecting people, data, and apps. My slang version of that, it's taking the friction out. That's around data, network, compute. I think I must have got this from LinkedIn or someplace. I thought this was a good characterization, but I want to hear yours in just a moment, Marco. But it says, I connect people to technology to solve problems. I have worked with all of the major studios, very interesting. Helped launch AAA and mobile video games, also very interesting. And worked with lots of different companies to support media and entertainment. And then he adds, oh, and I take photographs. That's pretty cool. So welcome to our little show here. I appreciate you being here. We should have a good time.
Yeah, thanks, Al. It's so great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks again. And look, tell us a little bit about yourself and don't leave anything out. Give us the good, juicy stuff, man. I want to hear the juicy stuff.
You want the gossip?
Yeah, of course.
So I am. I've been with Lumen for a year and a quarter. My job here is to lead the strategic technology partnerships team. It's a group of people that are super talented, that we are driving new routes to market for our partners. We're, in essence, we're bringing our partners in, wrapping them in our love of infrastructure and bringing them to customers to be able to describe value and do things like speed up ROI, do things like deploy technology quickly in a secure and efficient manner. You mentioned our mission statement, which is very true. It really is connecting people, data, and applications, and helping businesses grow. That's what I'm doing here. My past, which you touched on, I worked for more years than I care to mention in Hollywood, working across the studios, doing all sorts of exciting things. I was very lucky because I was brought into projects on the cutting edge of video distribution, video production, monetization, and I really got a broad view of how Hollywood works. And I was able to do some pretty cool things. I would say that it's really taught me the love of storytelling and using that to tell stories with technology and partners, and as you said, solve problems together. I find that the organic piece of this thing that we call technology is still very important.
So look, I can't just skate over the fact that you were in Hollywood. It sounds pretty glamorous. It sounds sexy anyway. So give us a little bit more on that. What were you doing in Hollywood? On the surface, from somebody that doesn't know anything like me, seems very different.
It could seem that way, but it's really not. I mean, it's fundamentally business problems are business problems. Hollywood has their own unique set of problems. I worked at Paramount Pictures. I worked with Warner Brothers. I worked with Disney. Did some work with Sony. So I got to see all of the studios and the way they work. And fundamentally, you've got the front of the house with the studio, which is the movie making. And you've got the back of the house, which is the accounting and the rights management and all the things that have to happen to monetize content, which is the same in any industry. You've got the front of house sellers, you've got the front of house marketing people, and you've got the back of house finance people that are doing their thing. I could tell you some stories. I probably shouldn't. But
no, I told you just a minute ago. That's what I wanted to hear, is those stories that you shouldn't tell me. That's what this podcast is about.
You really want the gossip, is what you're actually saying.
Yes. What's probably the biggest surprise that most people wouldn't recognize of working in Hollywood?
I'll give you a couple of examples. And actually the biggest surprise is probably the same thing. When I was at Paramount, there's a big B tank That's on the lot, which is they fill with water and they can do water scenes, and they can do, they use a backdrop of a big wall to film as a green screen. One day, as I'm working, my office at Paramount overlooked this tank, and I saw that they had filled it up and they were using it, and they had these guys on Sea-Doos busting around the B tank over and over and over again. And I was sort of like, that's interesting. What the hell are they doing? So during the day, I went downstairs to grab some lunch. And as I was walking by, I asked someone what they were doing. And they said they were filming the intro to a show called Orange County that came out many years ago. But I said, oh, what? They're filming the show here? Why are they filming the show here? They said, well, we tried to do it on the ocean, which is where the show is set, but it didn't look real enough. So instead, we moved it to the B tank. Which is the surprise of Hollywood, right? I mean, it's you think you're seeing real, but it's really, there's a lot of effects and a lot of things that affect that drive the way these productions are made.
I wonder, Marco, how much is actually done still in the set versus, on the ocean, in cities, whatever. I mean, I hear they're doing a lot of filming in Atlanta and different areas. They still do a lot of pieces on the set.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, Paramount itself has got a fantastic city scene that I see in commercials all the time, that it's really just facades. It's just wood facades that are made to look like buildings, and they're made to look like sort of cityscapes, and companies come in there and they use that and they frame the shot. So all you're seeing is the front of this facade, and it looks like a building. Yeah. They have doors that open. You have people coming out of doors, and it looks like you're in a neighborhood in New York, but really you're actually on the set at Paramount Pictures or Warner Brothers, and they're trying to make it look more real than the real thing. There is a change that is happening, and the introduction of things like virtual sets, which is changing the way movies are being made and content's being produced, because they can transport you to a place with these wraparound LED walls that allow you to look like you're sitting, you're walking through a field, when in fact it's all being done on a screen behind you. That's a big change, and I think that's changing the way that people are approaching movie making, and changing the way that you have to prepare for movie making, which is probably the last change. When I started to step away a bit from media, that was the big thing that was happening, is how to change storytelling or adjust movie making to fit stories using these new technologies. Now, I will also say that one of the reasons I stepped away is because I think that the things that we're doing now actually support those changes in media. The ability to bring our technologies to bear, to get closer to a production with things like our Edge, which I know we're going to talk about. But with our Edge, allows us to do things that set up these productions for success, and allows us to translate the common ways that things were done to take content off a camera and move it to a place to be edited into a new and more effective way.
So what was your role specifically, something that we all would understand when you were working in Hollywood, working at Paramount?
So for Paramount Pictures specifically, I ran all the systems globally to support the selling of content after it was produced, the selling of content worldwide. So all of the rights that were needed to be able to say, I can sell this piece of content here. The complication is that it's not just I take one piece of content and I sell it to one place. I'm selling it globally at the same time. So you're assigning rights to contracts and that sort of thing. So that's what I was doing there. I was running.
Were you negotiating pricing too, or was it more technical in nature?
Luckily, I didn't have to negotiate pricing. We worked with there was a team of sellers that were actually doing that, depending on the type of distribution. So, when you think about Paramount and you think about the way content is made, when I was at Paramount, there was this thing called a sequential distribution release pattern, SDRP, which sounds very exciting, but it's really, okay, we're going to put this thing in movie theaters first. Then we're going to put it to pay TV or to DVD second. Then we're going to put it to pay TV, and then eventually it'll go to cable, which is all the various types of distribution. For each of those things that you see on a screen in any way or any shape, there's a contract behind it that grants the rights to the person that's showing it to do it, and there's money that's given in return. Super complicated, but that's fundamentally what I was doing, is managing all of that mess of data to be able to help do that. At the same time, working with production to make sure that they were producing things in the right lengths and the right formats and the right ways to deliver the content to all of these various people that were showing it.
Is there like a behind the scenes like SaaS service where you can go for a Paramount or any of the other studios where you say, look, I'm going to go look for this content. I want to make a commercial. I want to take something that's already made. It's much easier. So I can have the backdrop and do X, Y, or Z. How is that handled? I don't even know, man. I'm not a Hollywood guy, so.
Yeah, no. Paramount has a group of people that do that. You know, they work with the production companies. They work with outside entities to say, I want a snippet of The Godfather. They'll sell them that snippet and they'll license it for an amount of time. And The Godfather is a great example because it is a Paramount. Studio release. The one thing you can be sure of is if there's a way to mine content to make money, the studios are thinking of it, and especially now with the writer's strike last year and the things that happened, the industry is really working to get back to where it used to be in its heyday of this distribution pattern that really allowed for monetization.
So this makes for a perfect liaison. So then you make the transition to Lumen. You've been there, you say a little over a year, you said?
Been here over a year. I was actually with Microsoft for 8 years before that.
Okay.
Where I was working with in media and entertainment for Microsoft, working towards adapting our technologies to be able to serve the industry better. A lot more on the production side than the back of the house side, but spent 8 years doing that, working globally across TV and movie productions to bring the power of things like Azure to bear to be able to serve the requirements for these production companies.
I see. So what would make you transition then from Microsoft to Lumen? What's the attraction?
First of all, Lumen's undergoing a transformation, which we're neck deep in, which is always exciting because I'm able to disrupt a little bit and able to change the way that people are thinking about things. I like change. My career in Hollywood was all about change, and my career at Microsoft. But so I'm carrying on that tradition. But fundamentally, I joined for 4 reasons. The first one being our CEO, Kate Johnson. I was at Microsoft when she was running Americas for Microsoft, so I went through a transformation with her there. I was lucky enough to do some work with her at Disney. Massive amount of respect for Kate and her approach and the way that she does things. Our CRO is Ashley Haynes-Gaspar, and again, I was lucky enough at Microsoft to work with her on some experience type work, which was really changing the way that we were communicating to sellers and to customers through experiences. And then there's a lady by the name of Jana Matherly, who was my partner in crime at Microsoft, that allowed me, that we did just a whole bunch of stuff around experiences again. But those 3 are at Lumen. When the opportunity came up, I jumped. The 4th reason is the technology that we have. And I think that we're at a time now where, growing up in the industry in tech, there was software and hardware, and the 2 were overlapping. You needed better hardware to serve the changes in software, and then you needed better software to serve the power of hardware. And now there's the third leg is there and necessary, which is network. For AI, for things that we're doing, there's a massive amount of data that has to be moved around, and network is 100% critical. It used to be the afterthought, but customers are realizing now that they need to integrate it into the value that they're trying to drive so that they can be more effective quicker.
This is a fascinating time that we live in terms of technology, because we've got the perfect intersection now of data, network, compute. I mean, unlimited data, you get the network right, like Lumen does. You put all these together, it gives rise of the capabilities like AI that we've seen.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends will say, hey, why now? I mean, that's why. I mean, you've got unlimited data, unlimited access, speeds that are pushing physics. Now is the time.
Well, yeah, and we can talk about quantum in a minute, but the thing that the snippet of data that I love is that there are hundreds of zettabytes of data being pushed around to be able to train AI, which I don't think is sustainable. Every day we're adding more data that needs to be pushed to AI. there's a need to actually start to think about sustainability in what we do. We know the price of power is high to be able to train AI models, but there's a cost to pushing data down a copper pipe or a fiber pipe. So, the things that we're doing are really working to harness that data, trim it back to what really has to travel so that we can push the right sets of data to train AI models, reduce things like hallucinations and drift when people are querying these models, and make it more efficient and better to experiment with AI. One of the big things that we're doing with IBM, funnily enough, is thinking about how we actually enable experimentation. By being able to have a composable network that has got compute in there in a rentable model outside of the cloud, we're finding that we can actually enable experimentation faster and easier to be able to get to that final state of what AI really needs to be, which is, serving a business problem.
That's why when I talk with clients, it's always about the use case. It's not about the technology. If you're chasing technology, you're going to be unsuccessful. You got to chase that use case and then reverse engineer that. To start this maybe properly, or to take a step back just for a moment. Look, you've already mentioned this. IBM's been partnering for Lumen for many years. Great partnership. We both went through many transformations. Mm-hmm. I gave you the formal mission statement of Lumen, but now I'm asking you, what's behind all those classy, clever words?
So I'm clearing my throat to be able to answer this in the most eloquent way. We're building the backbone for the AI economy. I don't know if you've seen in the press, but we made some pretty big deals with the hyperscalers last year. And we're continuing that tradition now, working with our customers to build this backbone. I'm going to use a term that I think you used on one of your podcasts, which is really democratizing access. Customers need to be able to think about how to sift through the massive amounts of data, as I mentioned before, build these models that are effective and solve business problems. That's really what our mission is. And my mission within Lumen is to help partners be able to do that effectively. We know that we have got the network. We know that we have compute. We know that we have storage. We know that we have all the things that are necessary, all of the ingredients. What we want to do is be able to bring partners to bear on top of those things and be able to drive this backbone for the AI economy. That's the benefit. How we're doing that is through a cultural transformation, which Kate has started. It's less about, I shouldn't say that. It's very much about getting the technology right, but it's also about getting the culture right to be able to embrace the ever-changing needs of our customers. Things are moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's no longer you can take a year or two to figure out a new direction or a new path. We need to be able to respond quickly to satisfy these things like AI requirements. And that's really what we're doing, is building out our network to be able to support these things.
Look, that's fascinating. And I'm still going to ask this maybe silly question of what's more important and why, culture or the technology. But I hear what back of my mind saying culture eats technology for breakfast. So I'm sure there's an answer in there somewhere very similar. But tell me a little bit about the culture transformation. And then the next question is going to follow up is going to be around the technology.
Yeah. So, culturally, we're moving from this from a semi-siloed organization that is everyone's doing their thing to being a lot more of a collaborative, cross-functional organization where people can pick up the phone, or Teams at this now, and actually ask the questions and seek collaboration, knowing that they're going to get an answer and help to drive to the right thing, which is value for our customers. I've got 1,000 examples of as I was setting up my group, of leaning, reaching out to other areas of the company, seeking help, seeking guidance, seeking ideas, and receiving back all of the things that I needed, plus requests of my time to be able to help them in the things that they're trying to achieve. So it's a very interesting shift from what has traditionally been a telco type company to driving more to be a techno company, tech co. We do like techno as well, but tech co, which allows us to be a little more agile and nimble and really embrace the problems and figure out ways to solve them. Now, I will say for anyone that's listening that knows us, it is a journey. So there are still things that we're solving. But what I'm finding is that when we run into these problems, we're embracing them. We're treating them as something to solve, and then we're learning from them and adjusting to be able to do that. And that requires culture. You have to have the culture of change, and you have to have the culture of acknowledgement and vulnerability to be able to talk about these things and try to and do better every day.
Can you give a couple actions on how you're changing that culture? Because I get what you're saying, understand it, but culture is so difficult to change. And you mentioned Kate a couple times. There must be some secret to success that is gotten Lumen on this path, because I've seen it as well. You're progressing very aggressively. So you are changing that culture. Mm-hmm. How and what actions are you taking to make it work so fast? You're at clock speed. How are you doing it?
Well, so the first thing that Kate did is brought in training for everybody with Brené Brown, which is Dare to Lead training, which this is my second time through this process with her. And the reaction to it initially was very skeptical. But as people started to do the training, everybody got the same vernacular to be able to communicate in a different way. In other words, things like vulnerability came into the conversation where, in a common business practice, you don't talk about I'm vulnerable. We have other things that came to bear, that people started to understand the process of communicating in a much better way. Things like, we have a term called rumbling, which is when I don't agree with something, we can talk about it. We can put it out there and we can come to a solution together. Clear is kind is another term, which allows us to say what's really on our mind and realize that we're actually being kind at doing that, because it cuts through the politics or the general politics of a company. All of those things, all of those terms could be viewed as being pithy, but it's really everybody gets what that means and everybody's on the same page in using them. And it also allows us to be more conversant and more collaborative.
Now, I know the book. I mean, I've read the book. Fantastic book. I'd highly recommend. If you haven't read Dare to Lead, you're missing out, because it is a fantastic book. I remember both of those being in the book. One of the best things I like about the book is she talks about being in the arena. Mm-hmm. I use that analogy a lot as well.
That's exactly right.
There's a lot of people in the stands and they all have an opinion, but they're not in the arena. Very different if you're in the arena fighting lions and tigers. If you're looking at it, you can make all kinds of criticism that doesn't count. It's worthless. Having said that, so I got to believe this is more than the book. This is a framework that you guys are instrumenting in through Lumen.
That's exactly right. And alongside that, there's human aspects too. I remember I was on a call with Kate where someone asked her, what do we need to do to be successful? Her answer would have been a common answer would be sell more, sell better. Her answer was 3 words: eat, move, and sleep. In that she was saying, if you really want to be successful, you have to eat, you have to move, and you have to sleep, because those are the tools that will allow you to be part of a culture and be successful within that culture, which I find super exciting because it allows us to actually think about the humans that are doing the work rather than, treating people like chattel, if you will.
It took me like 40 years to figure that. Eat, move, and sleep. You know what I mean? I did a lot of no sleep for a long time and thought that was the secret. I just had more hours in the day, right?
That's right. Wrong. That's right. Or sleeping on a plane, I think, is the other thing that we both used to do. That was the only sleep that we would get. The things that we're doing driving this cultural transformation lend itself to the technical piece, the technology piece, because the communication is now flowing back and forth from our product groups to our sellers and back again, where we can feedback directly what customers are saying. So it allows us to think about product roadmap in a much more tangible way. I fully believe in the way that we're going about doing it, and I see the evidence. And having gone through it once before, I'm seeing those things happen again, more or less in the same way. So it's quite astounding.
What's the management system? How does Kate and how do you check yourself along the way? Because you'll make some progress, then all of a sudden I think there's a tendency for organizations to go back to where they came from. How do you check yourself and say, take a pause, we're coming right back, let's pull everybody back in? How do you do that?
We have mechanisms that we're using to track what we're trying to achieve. We set goals, and we have our teams mimic or derive from our goals their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally use those as the driver to check ourselves. We've said we're going to do this. What's our path there? How do we get there? Are we thinking about that goal as being the thing that we're trying to drive to? And if we're not, why are we adjusting? What does that mean? What's happening to our goal? It's very much thinking about things in that way that allows us to track our progress along the way. And of course, we have metrics with quotas and billing and all of the things that a technology company that is for profit would have to do. And I'm sure that even nonprofits do it. But, we have all of those mechanisms as well. But I spend my time thinking about what I've signed up to achieve monetarily and, the qualitative things that are set up in my goals. And then I look at the people that work for me and say, how are we achieving my goals through your goals? And is there a disconnect? If there is, okay, what do we do to adjust? But again, it's a conversation. It's not you're not doing it, you need to change. It's how do we adjust to be able to be successful? Personally speaking, we do quarterly check-ins with our teams. And I think the first one that I did with my folks was a little shocking to them because I didn't actually talk about quota or achievement. I talked about value. And I wanted to know what they were doing outside of work to allow for work-life balance. And were they feeling like they were bringing the right value to the position? Were their core values being expressed? Were they waking up in the morning feeling like, I want to do this? And if not, it's okay to say it. Let's figure out what we need to do to put you in that place where you're bringing that value. And I've made some changes and some swivels on the team to address those value questions because everyone has that value. I just don't think we talk about it enough.
I used to hear things like work-life balance, and to me, it's work-life integration. Everybody bringing their full self, because if it's balance, you just spend more time working than having the personal side, at least in my mind. And when I do roundtables, I'll usually ask very simply, "What do you do for fun?" I always want to know that about everybody bringing their whole self, and they seem like they want to get on with it. Hey, let's get on to the business. No. We're going to take some time here. What do you do for fun? Because I think it's important to really understand who's sitting across the table.
I think you're absolutely right. I also think that we wake up every day wanting to do something. And if work is a struggle, that's the problem, right? So are you living your core values in the work that you're doing? And it's okay to say no, because we've got this one life to live. Let's try to make sure that we're positioning ourselves to be successful. And the expectation, at least from my management style, is that I'm going to help people get to that value. There's times where I've had to say, no, you're going to do this because I see it and they don't. And then there's a reaction that's positive. More often than not, just the conversation gets us to that value statement. I think the world of remote working is exactly right to your integration point, work-life integration. I don't know about you, but being a remote worker, it means that my day is not 9 to 5 and I shut down. It means that I often have things to do outside of 9 to 5 that allow me to achieve goals. So integrating life into my work is critical. I book time to focus. I book time to go work out. And I make sure that those things are built into my calendar so that I can have that work-life integration and feel like I'm actually living while I'm working.
I'm with you. When COVID started, by example, I was like, oh, finally some rest off the road. It was going to be great. About, I'd say 3-4 months in, I was getting up at 5 and forgetting everything else till I went to bed. And after about 4 months of that, I said, all right, this is new paradigm. I've got to reinvent myself here because it was real integration. I had talked integration before that, but then it became, I'm scheduling personal things in my calendar to make sure it is integration. This day for lunch, I got to go get this done. I'm going to work out from 5 to 6. I had to do that. Otherwise, It was soul crushing.
Yeah, you have to make it a conscious effort, right? You have to be consciously aware that you need to do it. I myself, I started my group 7 months ago, really, with a deck that I was walking around the company saying, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Until someone said, yeah, okay, stop talking, go do it. But we were very much in startup mode, bringing resources in and getting things organized.
Yeah.
So I was traveling like crazy. And I realized actually it was my girlfriend that sort of pointed out, you need to think about life now. And thank God that she was here, because she actually helped me to realize these things. And that's where the integration comes in, and that's now why I'm thinking about these things in the right way. And we've got Kate and Ashley that are both saying the same thing. Make sure that you integrate life into work.
Look, you got to have an accountability partner. No matter who that is, to keep you honest. Like I always say, I'll give you one last example. I write my values down. I presume you're the guy that does that too. Because I think it's important every so often when you're steering off to go take a look, make sure you're operating according to your values. And like sometimes I feel like I'm not where I'm supposed to be or something, and I should have done this or should have done that. And as soon as I start to look backwards, my wife will say, hold on. Let's review. Are you going to give up coaching 7th grade girls basketball? And I'm like, no, I would never give that up. And she's like, yeah, okay. So let's get real here. And then you think, yeah, I did the right thing.
Well, it's good to have someone looking over your shoulder going, you need to think about these things. You said something that we're doing as well, that we're encouraged to do. We're calling them integrity partners, which is someone that you work with on a consistent basis that will give you the steer around how things are going.
That's awesome. How are they chosen?
I mean, for myself, it was super organic. It's someone that I worked with at Microsoft that's here now, and she's the person I pick up the phone and I'm like, here's what I'm doing. What do you think? And she does the same back to me. It's super useful, and I would encourage everyone to figure out whatever you want to call it, partner, integrity, to be able to sort of give you an honest steer at work. Our loved ones can't do that because they don't see into our day-to-day life. Yeah. But having that person at work that can help you understand things that need to be done or things that you need to communicate in a different way is super useful.
Formal program, or is just being encouraged?
It's encouraged. It's not a go to this form and tell us who it is, but it's definitely a thing too.